She did look away, the alien admiral who selected a human. Its hull shimmered with a strange, shifting light, and the hum of the engines resonated like a heartbeat through the void. Captain Alara Voss stood on the observation deck, staring out at the galaxies beyond. Her heart beat faster than she wanted it to. She had faced difficult situations before, conflicts on distant colonies, hostile wildlife on mining planets, pirates in uncharted sectors. But this was different. This was the first time she would meet the alien admiral whose reputation alone could terrify an entire fleet. Admiral Zyra was known across dozens of star systems. Her decisions were sharp, her mind quicker than most entire councils, and her discipline absolute. She had selected representatives from hundreds of species over the centuries, but never a human. Humans, the galaxy said, were too fragile, too short-lived, too emotional to be of any real importance. Yet somehow, here Alara was, chosen from among millions to face the evaluation. And unlike the others who had been examined and rejected long ago, she had one advantage. She did not look away. The hall where the selection ceremony would take place was immense. Transparent panels gave a view of the stars streaking past as the warship moved at near-light speed. The walls seemed to pulse with a quiet energy, and the floor was so smooth it reflected the faint glow of the alien light. Species of all shapes and sizes had already gathered, murmuring among themselves. Some had 6 eyes, some floated above the ground, some had scales that glittered in the light. Every one of them had come hoping to be chosen, but the tension in the air suggested that most would fail. Alara's own species was far smaller than most. Her frame was delicate, her features unremarkable compared to the dazzling displays of the aliens around her. But she felt none of the fear that others radiated. Fear, she realized, would only weaken her, and she could not afford that now. She straightened her posture and focused on the approaching figure of Admiral Zyra. The Admiral entered silently, her presence commanding the entire hall without a single word. She was taller than most humans would imagine possible, her form sleek and angular, with scales that shimmered between deep blue and violet. Her eyes were piercing, black with golden flecks, and they scanned the gathered crowd with a precision that made several delegates visibly shrink back. The murmurs quieted instantly, replaced by a profound silence that pressed down on Alara like a physical weight. Zyra paused in the center of the hall, her gaze lingering on each candidate. When it reached Alara, the human did something almost unheard of. She did not avert her eyes. She held her gaze steadily, meeting the Admiral's stare with quiet confidence. A ripple went through the hall, and several aliens whispered to one another in disbelief. Many species had bowed, shifted uncomfortably, or turned away entirely, but this small, unassuming human simply stared. For a long moment, Zyra said nothing. Then she moved with an elegance that seemed effortless, approaching Alara as if gliding across the floor. Her voice was deep and melodic, resonating in a way that carried across the hall. "You are a human," Zyra said, her tone more of observation than question. "Most of your kind would cower at my presence. Why do you not look away?" Alara's pulse quickened, but her voice remained steady. "Because I have nothing to hide, and because I want to understand, not fear." The hall was silent. Even the other candidates seemed to lean in slightly, as if drawn to the exchange. Zyra's golden-flecked eyes studied Alara in a way that made the human feel exposed, yet strangely respected. "Curiosity," Zyra said finally, almost to herself, "and courage. That is rare in your kind." She gestured, and a platform rose from the floor, forming a circle in the center of the hall. "You will enter the evaluation. If you succeed, you will become the first human ever selected." Alara nodded, a mix of determination and nerves settling in her chest. She stepped forward onto the platform. As soon as her foot touched the surface, a soft hum filled the hall and holographic panels lit up around her. Images, symbols, and strange shapes appeared in the air. The first test, Zyra explained, would measure intelligence and adaptability. The panels displayed puzzles that combined logic, memory, and perception. Aliens had been trained for centuries to understand such systems, but many faltered immediately. Shapes rotated incorrectly, patterns were misread, and some simply froze, unable to process the complexity. Alara approached the first puzzle carefully, observing the shifting symbols. Then she smiled slightly. Humans often solved problems not by brute force or memory, but by intuition. She rotated the shapes with precise gestures, recognizing a pattern that others could not see, and the system acknowledged her solution instantly. A murmur of astonishment passed through the hall. Zyra raised a scaled hand, observing quietly, her expression unreadable. The next challenge appeared, a mental simulation of a collapsing star system, where candidates had to rescue as many life forms as possible within limited resources. Many aliens panicked, focusing only on the largest, most impressive species. Alara quickly assessed the situation. She organized the rescue by priority, saving small and fragile species first, then the larger ones. Her strategy was efficient, humane, and practical. By the time the simulation ended, she had achieved the maximum possible success score. Zyra's eyes narrowed slightly, the first hint of approval. The final test of this stage was social interaction. Candidates were placed in a simulated council chamber with representatives from various species. They had to negotiate a solution to a conflict over scarce resources. Most aliens used intimidation or manipulation. Alara, however, relied on empathy and reasoning. She listened carefully, asked questions, and suggested solutions that no one had considered. Alliances based on complementary strengths, sharing of resources proportional to need, and contingency plans to prevent future conflicts. Slowly, the representatives began to cooperate, following her lead. By the end, the council had achieved a solution that far exceeded the expectations of the simulation. Even Zyra allowed herself a small, approving tilt of her head. The day's trials ended, but the tension did not ease. As Alara stepped off the platform, several aliens approached, some with curiosity, others with envy. She felt the weight of their stares but maintained her composure. In the quiet of a corridor leading away from the hall, she allowed herself a deep breath. She had passed the first stage, but she knew this was only the beginning. Later, in the privacy of her quarters aboard the warship, Alara reflected on what had happened. She could not ignore the feeling that Zyra's interest went beyond simple evaluation. The Admiral had never selected a human, yet she had lingered on Alara's gaze longer than on any other candidate. There was something about humans, she realized, that even the most advanced species could not fully predict or control. A soft chime interrupted her thoughts. A message appeared on the holographic panel. Report to the observation deck. Immediate briefing. Alara's pulse quickened again. She entered the deck to find Zyra already present, looking out at the stars. The Admiral's silhouette was imposing, yet there was a faint hint of curiosity in her stance. "You performed well," Zyra said, her voice carrying a weight that made every word feel deliberate. "But the next stage will test more than skill. It will test resilience, courage, and the essence of what it means to be human." Alara nodded, understanding that this was not just about intelligence or strategy. She would have to show that humans could thrive in a universe that often underestimated them. Zyra continued, her gaze sweeping over the stars. "Many have tried and failed before you. Some species crumble under pressure, some manipulate others without care, some hide behind rules and rituals. You, however, are unpredictable. That is both your weakness and your strength." Alara did not flinch. "Then I will rely on my strengths." A long pause followed. Finally, Zyra spoke again. "Very well, sleep well, Captain Voss. Tomorrow your trials will begin in earnest. The galaxy watches, though few realize it." As Alara returned to her quarters, she allowed herself a small smile. For the first time, she felt the exhilaration of stepping into the unknown. Humanity had never been chosen before, yet here she was, standing at the edge of something extraordinary. She lay down, staring at the ceiling, thinking of the countless challenges ahead. She thought of the stars, the infinite possibilities, and the alien admiral who had not looked away. For the first time, she realized that the universe was watching, and humans might finally have a place among the stars. The warship hummed around her like a living organism, a constant reminder that nothing would be simple. Tomorrow would bring new trials, new tests, and new dangers. But for now, Ilara allowed herself to feel a sense of pride. She had faced the gaze of a being who had never respected humans, and she had not looked away. The stars outside her window glimmered like tiny promises. One human had stepped forward and the galaxy had noticed. The next day, the warship thrummed with life. Ilara had barely slept, her mind alive with anticipation and uncertainty. She walked down the long corridors toward the trial chambers, her boots making soft sounds on the smooth floor. The walls seemed to pulse faintly with energy, and every few steps, she caught glimpses of creatures she had never imagined. Some floated above the ground with transparent wings. Others had limbs that twisted in ways that defied human anatomy. Yet all of them were tense and alert, knowing the evaluation ahead would test more than simple skill. Ilara entered a large, circular chamber, its ceiling far above and filled with shifting lights. In the center, a platform hovered a few inches above the ground, illuminated by soft blue light. Admiral Zyra stood at the edge, her eyes scanning the candidates with the precision of a hawk. The other species seemed to shrink under her gaze, but Ilara met it steadily. She had learned from yesterday that courage was not just about facing fear, but about showing it did not control her. "Today," Zyra said, her voice resonating through the hall, "you will face trials designed to test mind, body, and spirit. Some of you will falter. Some will fail entirely. Humans are fragile, it is said. Let us see if this one is an exception." Ilara's heart beat faster, but she did not hesitate. She stepped onto the platform, the hum of energy beneath her feet vibrating slightly. The first challenge appeared as a holographic maze, stretching endlessly in all directions. The walls were not physical but created from light and sound, shifting with every step. Candidates had to navigate it while avoiding traps, solving puzzles embedded in the environment, and reaching the exit before time ran out. Most aliens reacted instinctively, rushing forward or attempting to overpower the illusions. Many became disoriented, colliding with walls or triggering traps that sent them back to the start. Ilara paused, observing the patterns. Humans were not the strongest, she knew, but they could adapt. She studied the shifting light, noticing subtle cues the others ignored. A faint shimmer indicating a safe path, the way the sound of the maze changed near hazards. Step by step, she advanced. When a trap appeared, she calculated the safest way around it instead of charging forward. She solved the embedded puzzles not by brute force, but by connecting patterns and thinking creatively. Slowly, she moved through the maze, each challenge testing not just her intellect but her patience, her perception, and her ability to remain calm under pressure. At the same time, she noticed other candidates struggling. A towering alien with 4 arms tried to smash through a wall repeatedly, only to trigger another trap. Another creature, floating and translucent, became confused by the maze's shifting rules and drifted in circles. Ilara felt a moment of empathy for them. No matter how alien their bodies, the fear and pressure were universal. Finally, she reached the center of the maze, a glowing orb floating in midair. As she touched it, the maze dissolved, and a panel lit up with a score. She had not only completed the challenge but had achieved one of the highest scores ever recorded. Zyra's eyes narrowed slightly, the faintest hint of approval in their golden flecks. "Impressive," Zyra said, "but the mind alone does not define a being." Now we test adaptability and courage under conditions that may challenge everything you believe about yourself. The platform shifted, and suddenly Alara was no longer on solid ground. The chamber transformed into a simulation of an unstable planet. Gravity fluctuated, geysers erupted randomly, and the sky glowed with unnatural colors. Holographic images of creatures appeared in distress, scattered across dangerous terrain. The objective was clear: save as many as possible before the planet's environment became lethal. Many candidates panicked. The larger, stronger species tried to carry as many creatures as they could, but the unstable terrain caused them to fall repeatedly. Some used brute force, ignoring smaller beings in their path. Alara took a deep breath, assessing the situation. She knew that humans could not rely on strength alone. They needed strategy and ingenuity. She moved quickly but carefully. She prioritized the most vulnerable beings, forming chains and using natural formations to create safe paths. When a geyser erupted unexpectedly, she leapt to the side, grabbing a small creature before it was swept away. She used timing and observation, noticing that some eruptions followed patterns that could be predicted. Every move required thought, not just action. By the end of the simulation, Alara had saved nearly every life form possible. The scoring panel appeared again, this time showing her as one of the top performers. The other candidates looked at her with a mix of awe and frustration. Some whispered that humans were lucky, others muttered about impossible luck, but Zyra's eyes studied her with genuine interest. Luck had nothing to do with it. This human possessed focus, creativity, and calmness under stress, traits the galaxy often underestimated. After a brief pause, Zyra gestured, and the next challenge appeared: a social trial designed to test negotiation and leadership. Candidates were transported to a holographic council chamber filled with representatives of various species. They were given a scenario: a rare resource had been discovered, and conflict was inevitable. Each candidate had to propose a solution acceptable to all parties. Many aliens immediately resorted to intimidation or aggressive strategies. Some threatened other species, others attempted to manipulate votes using deceit. Alara stepped forward calmly. She listened first, asking questions to understand each representative's perspective. She noticed that certain species had hidden concerns that were not obvious at first glance. She proposed solutions that leveraged each species' strengths: shared technology for those with advanced knowledge, transportation aid for smaller species, and cooperative defense agreements for the weaker groups. Slowly, she saw cooperation forming. One by one, representatives began to accept her logic. Even those who had been hostile shifted their stance when they saw her fairness and clarity. By the end of the session, the council had reached a solution that no one could have predicted before the trial began. Zyra observed quietly, her golden-flecked eyes narrowing in approval. "Alara Voss," Zyra said after the session ended, "you have demonstrated not only intelligence and skill but something rare: understanding. You see beyond the obvious. You see what others often ignore. That is why humans may yet matter in ways the galaxy does not recognize." Alara felt a surge of pride, tempered by the knowledge that this was still only the beginning. She had proven herself in these trials, but more would come. Tests of loyalty, morality, and courage that would challenge not only her mind and body, but the very essence of what it meant to be human. Later, during a short break, she walked through the corridors, reflecting on the day. Many candidates had faltered, some in shame, others in panic. Humans, despite their physical limitations, had an advantage that no simulation could replicate: unpredictability combined with resilience. Humans could think outside the box, adapt to sudden change, and act with empathy in ways that even the most advanced aliens could not fully comprehend. She entered a small observation room overlooking the galaxy. Stars stretched endlessly, some glowing blue, others red and dying. The vastness was humbling, yet exhilarating. She realized that her species had been underestimated for centuries, not because humans lacked ability, but because other civilizations measured strength in the wrong way. Humanity had always survived against odds that seemed impossible. That was a power others could not easily quantify. A soft chime interrupted her thoughts. A holographic panel appeared, showing Zyra's image. The Admiral's expression was unreadable as always, but her eyes carried a message. Prepare yourself. The trials will continue. They will push you beyond what you think you can endure. Alara nodded silently, feeling a thrill of determination. She had already faced fear, uncertainty, and alien scrutiny. She could face more. Every challenge she overcame brought her closer to proving that humans were not weak, not fragile, and not insignificant. As she rested for the evening, she thought about the aliens she had encountered, their skills, their strengths, and their weaknesses. She realized that understanding others, forming alliances, and acting with integrity were more powerful than any weapon or technology. Those qualities, she thought, were the true advantage humans had. The ability to inspire trust, to adapt, and to see solutions where others saw only obstacles. That night she dreamed of the galaxy itself, vast and alive, filled with countless beings, each with their own ambitions. And among them she saw humanity standing not as a weak species, but as one capable of influence, courage, and ingenuity. When dawn came aboard the warship, Alara felt a renewed sense of purpose. Today, the trials would intensify. She would face situations designed to test not only her skill but her loyalty, courage, and understanding of what it truly meant to act as a human among alien civilizations. Yet she was ready. She had survived the mind trials, the physical challenges, and the social puzzles. She had adapted, persevered, and emerged stronger. The platform descended once more, signaling the start of the next stage. Alara stepped forward with steady steps, her heart filled not with fear, but with anticipation. She did not look away from the eyes of those who doubted her. She would face every challenge, and she would show the galaxy that humans were not to be underestimated. The chamber hummed with energy, lights shifting to create a new environment. Today would test every skill she had, every lesson she had learned. And somewhere deep in her mind, a quiet voice reminded her of Zyra's words. Unpredictability was her strength. Courage and understanding were her weapons. And she, a human, would continue to prove her worth in a universe that had long dismissed her kind. And with that thought, she stepped forward into the unknown, ready for whatever awaited. The next trial was unlike anything Alara had faced before. She had conquered puzzles, navigated deadly simulations, and negotiated with multiple alien species. But this test would reach deeper. It was designed to probe the core of her character, to see if her loyalty, courage, and moral compass could withstand extreme pressure. Zyra had made it clear, strength alone would not suffice. The human had proven clever, adaptable, and calm under physical and intellectual challenge. Now, she would face the trial that determined the very essence of what it meant to be human. Alara was led into a chamber that seemed larger than the others. The walls shimmered with holographic projections of stars, planets, and unknown alien landscapes. In the center floated a complex device, glowing with soft blue light. Zyra's voice echoed through the room. "This trial will test your loyalty," the Admiral said. "You will be given choices that affect not only yourself but others. Some will offer rewards at the cost of betrayal. Others will tempt you to abandon your values for personal gain. Humans are unpredictable. Let us see if that unpredictability is wisdom or folly." The challenge began immediately. A panel appeared, displaying the first scenario, a group of sentient beings trapped on a rapidly deteriorating planet. The catch: one option offered a quick escape for Alara alone, ensuring her safety, while another required her to risk her life to save them all. Alara studied the panel carefully. She thought of her own species, small and often underestimated, and the countless times humanity had survived by helping one another. Without hesitation, she chose the path that saved the trapped beings, maneuvering through the simulated hazards with courage and precision. The other candidates, many of whom were larger or stronger, often chose self-preservation, leaving the simulation incomplete or failing entirely. Zyra observed silently, her golden-flecked eyes reflecting faint interest. A predictable choice, she murmured, almost to herself. Yet it requires more courage than many realize. The next scenario appeared, more complex. Alara was placed in a diplomatic simulation where two species were on the verge of war. One offered her personal wealth and influence if she betrayed the other, providing false information to ensure victory. The choice was clear: personal gain versus integrity. Alara paused, thinking carefully. She understood that loyalty and trust were not just abstract ideals, they were practical tools in survival and cooperation. To betray one species would secure temporary advantage, but the long-term consequences could be catastrophic. She refused the offer, instead working tirelessly to mediate between the factions. Through careful negotiation, empathy, and understanding, she prevented the conflict and forged a fragile but meaningful alliance. A murmur of surprise passed through the observers. Aliens had not expected a human to refuse tangible reward for principle. Zyra tilted her head slightly, an almost imperceptible sign of respect. The trials escalated further. Alara found herself in a scenario designed to test moral courage under pressure. Holographic images displayed situations where bystanders were in danger, and she had limited time to respond. One simulation featured an alien child trapped beneath debris, while another showed a machine threatening to explode in a populated area. The simulations occurred simultaneously, forcing candidates to prioritize and act decisively. Many alien participants froze or acted selfishly, saving what was easiest or what appeared most beneficial to them. Alara, however, relied on human ingenuity. She quickly assessed the risks, coordinated movements, and devised strategies to save as many lives as possible. She moved between the simulations, adapting her approach with every new challenge. By the end, she had saved the maximum number of lives, demonstrating not only quick thinking but a steadfast commitment to the well-being of others. Zyra's eyes narrowed slightly, her expression unreadable yet undeniably engaged. After a short break, the final test of the day began. Alara was transported to a chamber resembling a council hall. Here, she encountered holographic representations of alien factions conspiring to seize power through deceit and manipulation. They expected her to side with the stronger faction, to betray the weaker for her own advantage. Alara studied the situation carefully. She recognized that blindly following strength or intimidation would betray the values that had carried her through previous trials. She chose a third path, exposing the conspirators' plans, while simultaneously ensuring the safety and interests of all parties. Her approach shocked many of the other candidates. Aliens who had relied on fear, manipulation, or brute force had not anticipated a strategy grounded in fairness, intelligence, and foresight. Slowly, the holographic council aligned behind her decisions, and what could have been chaos became a demonstration of her leadership and moral courage. Zyra finally spoke, her voice calm but carrying undeniable weight. You have acted with integrity when most would have chosen the easier path. You have shown that unpredictability in humans is not weakness, but a form of wisdom. Few species are capable of seeing beyond immediate gain or fear. Humans may yet surprise us all. Alara felt a surge of quiet pride, tempered by exhaustion. She had faced physical, intellectual, and moral challenges, and she had emerged not only unbroken but stronger. Yet she knew that the final evaluation was still ahead. Zyra had hinted that more tests would follow, ones that would push not only skill but the essence of character itself. As the day ended, Alara walked through the corridors of the warship. The other candidates avoided her gaze or whispered in low tones. Some looked at her with jealousy, others with admiration. She did not notice most of them. Her mind was focused on preparation, reflection, and observation. She had learned that humans thrived not through sheer power but through careful thought, empathy, and adaptability. These qualities, often overlooked by more physically dominant species, gave her an advantage no simulation could fully replicate. She stopped at a window overlooking a distant nebula. Colors of red, orange, and violet swirled together, painting the darkness of space in breathtaking beauty. In that moment, she allowed herself to reflect on the journey so far. Humanity had survived in a universe that often dismissed it, not through raw strength, but through resilience, courage, and the ability to act when others hesitated. That, she realized, was the essence of her advantage. A soft chime interrupted her thoughts. A message appeared on the holographic panel. Report immediately. The next phase begins shortly. Alara exhaled slowly and straightened her posture. She had passed the trials of loyalty and moral courage, but she knew that the next stage would challenge her in ways even more profound. She would face tests that demanded not only skill and integrity, but also the ability to inspire, to lead, and to make decisions with consequences that reached beyond herself. When she entered the next chamber, she was met with a scene that seemed almost alive. The walls shifted, forming a landscape of alien cities, forests, and oceans. Holographic beings appeared, some in distress, others observing. Each scenario required immediate decision-making, blending moral, physical, and intellectual challenges. Alara moved carefully, observing each situation. She realized that success required balance, courage without recklessness, intelligence without arrogance, empathy without naivety. She acted decisively, adapting to each new situation with a blend of creativity and careful thought. When she saved a stranded species from a collapsing cliffside, she did so not by brute force, but by creating a lever system using materials in the environment. When she mediated a dispute between rival factions, she listened first, understood their motivations, and proposed a solution that considered all parties. Hours passed in the chamber, each scenario escalating in difficulty. Candidates around her faltered, some physically overwhelmed, others morally compromised. Alara's humanity, the combination of courage, intelligence, and moral clarity, allowed her to excel where others failed. Finally, the chamber quieted. Zyra appeared, stepping forward from the shadows, her expression unreadable. "You have acted with clarity, courage, and integrity," Zyra said. "You have demonstrated the qualities that define your species, yet elevate it beyond what most assume. You are unpredictable, yes, but in a way that is powerful and necessary." Alara felt a wave of exhaustion mixed with relief. She had faced some of the most challenging trials of her life, yet she had remained true to herself. She realized that the alien Admiral was not only testing skill but searching for something deeper, the ability to act with wisdom and courage, even when no one else could see or understand the consequences. As she left the chamber, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. The galaxy was vast, filled with dangers, opportunities, and mysteries. Humans were small in scale, yes, but their ability to adapt, to persevere, and to act with integrity set them apart in ways few other species could match. Alara looked up at the stars outside the warship. Somewhere in that vast expanse, countless species were waiting to judge, challenge, or dismiss humanity. Yet she knew that through courage, intelligence, and empathy, humans could carve a place for themselves that no one had expected. That night, she reflected on Zyra's words. Unpredictability was power, courage was strength, and moral clarity was influence. She understood that the trials ahead would continue to test these qualities, pushing her to the limits of endurance and judgment. But she also knew that she was ready. Humans were not meant to follow the path others laid out. They thrived when forging new ways, seeing opportunities where others saw obstacles, and acting when others hesitated. As she lay down to rest, she allowed herself one small, satisfied thought. She had proven that humans could stand in the galaxy not as weaklings, but as beings capable of courage, insight, and leadership. The stars outside glimmered like distant eyes, watching and waiting. And in the quiet hum of the warship, Alara understood that humanity's true trial had only just begun. The next stage of the evaluation took Alara to the heart of the galaxy, a grand chamber aboard the flagship, where the Interstellar Council would convene. This chamber was massive, stretching hundreds of meters in length, with walls that glimmered like liquid crystal. Stars were visible through the transparent ceiling, and countless alien delegates had gathered, their forms strange, magnificent, and sometimes terrifying. Their presence radiated power, intelligence, and pride, each species certain of their superiority. Humans, they assumed, would not be able to compete. Alara stepped into the chamber, her posture calm but confident. Many of the delegates whispered among themselves, their voices a soft murmur, layered with skepticism and curiosity. She could feel their doubt, even without understanding their languages fully. Humans, they seemed to think, were small, weak, and easily outmatched. But she knew differently. Humans thrived on adaptability, creativity, and courage. They could face challenges that no other species anticipated. Today, she would prove it. Admiral Zyra appeared at the center, her form imposing, her presence commanding immediate attention. Her golden-flecked eyes scanned the crowd before resting briefly on Alara. "This is your final evaluation," Zyra announced. "You will face the Council, a gathering of the galaxy's most powerful species. Your task is to demonstrate not only your intelligence and courage, but your ability to influence, persuade, and act with wisdom under pressure. Many have failed before you. Humans are untested in this arena. Let us see if this one is different." Alara took a deep breath and stepped forward. Holographic projections of the Council's agenda appeared, highlighting critical decisions that affected entire star systems, trade agreements, territorial disputes, resource allocation, and defense alliances. Each decision had consequences, and each faction had its own interests. The first session involved a dispute over a rare energy source discovered on a remote planet. Two powerful species were on the brink of war, each claiming ownership. The other candidates immediately began to assert themselves, offering threats, promises, or manipulation to win favor. Alara observed carefully. She did not react impulsively. She listened to the arguments, assessed the facts, and considered the needs of all parties involved. She began to speak, her voice steady and clear. "This resource is valuable to all of us, not just for power but for survival," she said. "If we act selfishly, none of us will benefit in the long term. I propose a cooperative approach, where each faction receives access based on mutual agreement and shared responsibility. We can establish monitoring systems to ensure fairness and prevent conflict." The room fell silent. Delegates exchanged glances, some skeptical, others intrigued. One of the larger species, with scales of gold and green, spoke aggressively, rejecting the proposal. Alara remained calm. She explained step by step how her plan would benefit everyone, using logic, empathy, and foresight. Slowly, the delegates began to reconsider. They realized that cooperation, guided by a human who understood fairness and strategy, could prevent war and ensure long-term stability. Zyra's eyes followed every word. She had seen brilliance before, but rarely had a human-influenced powerful species with such clarity and authority. The unpredictability that had made humans seem fragile now appeared as a strength. The ability to act morally, decisively, and strategically, even when others expected hesitation or weakness. The next session was even more challenging. Hidden agendas and conspiracies were revealed among the delegates. Some had secretly allied to gain control of the council, planning to manipulate decisions for their own gain. Alara noticed subtle signs, whispers, coded gestures, and shifts in posture. She understood immediately that exposing the plot was essential. She stood and addressed the council with confidence. "I see a plan to manipulate this assembly for personal gain," she said. "This is dangerous, not just for fairness but for the stability of all species. I urge transparency and accountability. If we do not act, the consequences could be catastrophic." Gasps and murmurs spread across the chamber. The conspirators attempted to deflect and intimidate her, but Alara remained steady. Her words were simple, clear, and unyielding. She did not threaten, she did not beg, she presented facts, reasoning, and a vision of fairness. Slowly, some delegates began to side with her, recognizing the truth of her observations. The conspirators realized they had underestimated the human. They attempted more subtle manipulation, offering alliances and incentives to sway her, hoping to exploit what they assumed was human weakness. Alara paused, weighing their offers. She knew the value of trust, loyalty, and integrity. Accepting any bribe or alliance that betrayed others would compromise not just the outcome, but the principles she represented. She refused politely but firmly. Zyra observed from the side, her expression unreadable, yet there was a faint admiration in her eyes. The human had not only identified deception, but had acted to counter it without compromise or fear. That was rare among even the most experienced alien diplomats. Alara continued, presenting a solution that satisfied the council while neutralizing the conspirators' plans. She proposed transparency measures, joint oversight committees, and shared responsibilities for enforcement. The delegates debated, challenged, and questioned, but her calm, rational approach gradually won support. By the end, the alliance was formed, conspiracies thwarted, and peace maintained. The room erupted into discussion, but this time with respect for her input. Some delegates approached her afterward, offering words of acknowledgement in their own languages. She responded with simple, clear gestures, demonstrating humility and respect. She had not sought praise or recognition, only the right outcome. Zyra finally stepped forward. "You have acted in ways that are rare for any species," she said, her voice carrying through the chamber. "You have shown that humans, though underestimated, can act with wisdom, courage, and integrity in situations that demand leadership. Few beings are capable of this." Alara bowed slightly, acknowledging the Admiral's words, though she did not let them distract her. The council continued, but the atmosphere had changed. Where doubt and superiority had existed, respect and curiosity now took root. Humans were no longer dismissed. They were considered capable, influential, and perhaps necessary. The final session of the day tested her decisiveness. A sudden simulation of a natural disaster swept through the holographic representation of the galaxy. Asteroids hurtling toward inhabited planets, storms ravaging settlements, and energy surges threatening critical infrastructure. Delegates looked at her expectantly, some confused, some hesitant. Alara acted immediately. She assessed the threats, prioritized responses based on urgency and impact, and coordinated the council's resources efficiently. Her choices were swift, logical, and humane. Small mistakes were inevitable, but her adaptability allowed her to correct them before disaster could spread. The council's representatives began to follow her lead, inspired by her courage and clarity. When the simulation ended, the scoring system, monitored secretly by Zyra and her team, showed unprecedented results. The response had saved countless lives, prevented conflicts, and strengthened alliances. Many delegates openly acknowledged her leadership, some even applauding, though they did so in their own cultural ways. Alara felt a quiet sense of accomplishment, tempered by the knowledge that this was only one stage of the evaluation. The trials had tested her intelligence, adaptability, courage, moral clarity, and leadership. She had succeeded, but the ultimate selection was still in the hands of Zyra. Later, in a private observation room, Zyra approached her. "You have exceeded expectations," the Admiral said, her tone calm but deliberate. "Humans were considered fragile, short-lived, and ill-suited for leadership among the galaxy's powerful species. You have proven that those assumptions are false." Alara nodded, feeling the weight of the compliment. "Thank you, Admiral. I only did what I believed was right." Zyra studied her for a long moment. "That is exactly why you have succeeded. Strength, intelligence, or technology alone do not define influence. The ability to act decisively with integrity, to inspire others, and to maintain clarity under pressure. These are traits that even the most advanced species often lack. Humans possess them in ways that are difficult to predict, and that is why I am watching you closely." Alara felt a mixture of pride and humility. She realized that her journey had only begun. The Council had witnessed her skills, her courage, and her moral clarity, but the true test of her potential, the ability to represent humanity in the galaxy and shape alliances, was yet to come. As she walked through the corridors of the flagship that evening, she reflected on the day. The galaxy was vast, filled with beings of immense power, intelligence, and experience. Yet she had learned that humans had qualities that were not always visible, but immensely powerful: adaptability, empathy, courage, and moral clarity. Those traits allowed them to act where others hesitated, to make choices that could change the course of events, and to influence others through integrity rather than intimidation. Alara looked out at the stars through the massive observation window. Somewhere in that endless expanse, countless civilizations were watching, judging, and testing. Many underestimated humanity, but she now understood that the universe itself would have to adjust its expectations. Humans could act boldly, wisely, and decisively when it mattered most. She thought of Admiral Zyra, the being who had first seen her courage and refused to look away. The Admiral's observation, analysis, and quiet mentorship had guided her through the trials so far. Yet Alara knew that Zyra's ultimate judgment would decide not only her future, but potentially the future of humanity's place among the stars. When she finally rested that night, she allowed herself one quiet thought. Humans were small, yes, but their unpredictability, courage, and integrity made them powerful in ways the galaxy could not yet measure. They had survived impossible odds, adapted to every challenge, and thrived through intelligence, empathy, and determination. That power, often dismissed, would now be on display for the galaxy to witness. Alara closed her eyes, knowing that tomorrow would bring new challenges. The Council had seen her capabilities, but the final evaluation, the moment when the selection would be made, was approaching. She had navigated intelligence tests, physical and moral trials, and Council negotiations. Now all that remained was to demonstrate that humanity could lead, inspire, and survive in a galaxy that had long underestimated it. And she was ready. The Council chamber buzzed with anticipation. Delegates from countless star systems filled the vast space, their forms dazzling, imposing, and diverse. Each species had its own expectations, its own pride, and its own doubts. Among them stood Captain Alara Voss, a human, the first of her kind to reach this stage. She could feel the weight of every eye upon her, not with hostility alone, but with curiosity, disbelief, and even hope. Admiral Zyra, standing at the center of the chamber, raised her hand. The room fell silent. "Today," she said, her voice deep and resonant, "the final evaluation begins. What you witness will determine whether a human can stand among the galaxy's most powerful species as a leader, a negotiator, and a force of balance. You will see actions, decisions, and reasoning that may surprise you. Observe closely, for this is a historic moment." Alara's pulse quickened, but she remained composed. She had passed intellectual trials, physical simulations, and moral tests. She had proven loyalty, courage, and adaptability. Now she would face her greatest challenge yet, navigating the complex politics of the Interstellar Council while maintaining integrity and demonstrating the unique strength of humanity. The first test was immediate. Reports of a looming resource war flashed across the chamber's holographic displays. A rare element, essential for energy production, had been discovered on a neutral planet. Two of the largest species in the Council claimed exclusive rights, each threatening conflict if their claim was ignored. The other delegates began to argue, some loudly, some with subtle intimidation, each trying to assert influence over the decision. Alara stepped forward. Her voice was calm but carried authority. "This planet belongs to no one until a fair agreement is made," she said. "If we act selfishly, we risk war that could destroy countless lives. Cooperation is not weakness, it is strategy. Let us find a solution that benefits all, not just the strongest." Some delegates scoffed, their confidence in human frailty showing. Yet Alara continued. She proposed shared mining agreements, transparent resource management, and joint oversight committees. She emphasized fairness, efficiency, and the long-term benefits of collaboration. Her words were simple, clear, and compelling. Slowly, one faction after another nodded, realizing that her plan was practical and equitable. The second test arrived without warning. Hidden alliances among certain species sought to manipulate the Council's decisions to their advantage. They attempted subtle sabotage, misrepresenting facts and spreading misinformation to create confusion. Many delegates were swayed, their decisions influenced by fear or self-interest. Alara observed carefully, detecting patterns that others missed. Her human intuition allowed her to see beyond surface appearances. She addressed the Council with clarity and courage. "There is a plan to manipulate this assembly," she said. "Deception benefits no one in the long term. We must act openly, investigate thoroughly, and make decisions based on truth and fairness." Her words caused a stir. Some delegates tried to challenge her, questioning her understanding and authority. But she remained steadfast, presenting evidence and reasoning with calm precision. Slowly, the conspirators' influence weakened as more species recognized the validity of her observations. Even Admiral Zyra's expression, usually unreadable, showed a flicker of approval. Humans, she realized, could perceive truths in ways that even experienced alien diplomats could not. The unpredictability that had once seemed a weakness now revealed itself as a rare and powerful strength. The next challenge was immediate and dangerous. A holographic simulation displayed multiple crises across the galaxy: collapsing ecosystems, destabilized planets, and conflicts between civilizations. Each crisis required rapid assessment, prioritization, and action. Delegates looked to one another, uncertain how to proceed, while some attempted to dominate decision-making through intimidation. Alara moved swiftly. She assessed each situation logically and empathetically, recognizing which crises demanded immediate attention and which could be managed through coordination. She assigned tasks to willing delegates, forming small teams that combined strengths from various species. When natural disasters threatened settlements, she devised solutions that minimized risk while maximizing survival. Her decisiveness impressed the Council. Alien delegates who had doubted her skill began to follow her lead. They implemented her strategies, realizing that her human perspective, combining pragmatism, courage, and moral clarity, produced results that no single species could achieve alone. By the time the simulation concluded, the Council had prevented multiple disasters, stabilized critical systems, and strengthened interspecies alliances. The room was quiet, a rare pause of reflection as delegates absorbed the impact of her leadership. Zyra finally spoke. "Captain Alara Voss," she said, her tone deliberate and commanding, You have shown courage under pressure, intelligence in decision-making, and integrity in every action. You have influenced beings far older, larger, and more experienced than yourself. This is a testament to the potential of humans, a species long underestimated. Alara's chest swelled with pride, but she remained humble. She had acted not for recognition, but because it was the right choice. Her calm, measured approach had not only solved immediate problems, but had demonstrated that humans could serve as a stabilizing, guiding force in the galaxy. The final test of the day was subtle, psychological, and perhaps the most revealing. Zyra created scenarios designed to tempt Alara, personal gain, easy power, and shortcuts to influence. Many species succumbed, prioritizing wealth, dominance, or advantage over principle. Alara studied the options carefully. The choices were enticing, offering immense power or recognition, but each came at the cost of integrity or fairness. She rejected them all. Instead, she proposed solutions that maintained balance, fairness, and long-term stability. Her decisions were difficult, sometimes forcing compromise or personal sacrifice, yet they were guided by the principle that leadership was not about dominance, but about responsibility. Delegates and observers alike watched in silence. Few had expected a human to act with such clarity and foresight. Many had assumed that strength, intimidation, or age would dominate in the council. Instead, they witnessed a human navigate complexity with courage, morality, and intelligence, traits that were simultaneously rare and essential. After the trials concluded, the council adjourned for deliberation. Delegates discussed quietly, sharing opinions and observations. Alara remained in her chamber, reflecting on the journey that had brought her here. She thought of her species, small, fragile, often underestimated, but capable of qualities that even the galaxy's most advanced civilizations could not fully measure: courage, adaptability, empathy, and moral clarity. Hours passed. Finally, the chamber doors opened. Admiral Zyra stepped forward, her golden-flecked eyes sweeping the room before settling on Alara. The silence was palpable. The council awaited the verdict, and the galaxy seemed to hold its breath. "You have succeeded where few could," Zyra said. "You have demonstrated the strength of intelligence, the power of empathy, and the courage to act with integrity. The council recognizes your influence, not because you are the strongest, or the largest, or the most technologically advanced, but because you have shown qualities that are rare and indispensable. You have proven that humans, though underestimated, can serve as leaders, mediators, and a force for balance in the galaxy." Delegates began to murmur in approval. Some offered gestures of respect, others nodded in recognition. Alara felt a wave of relief, pride, and humility all at once. The journey had been long, challenging, and uncertain, but she had succeeded. She had shown that humans could stand among the most powerful species in the galaxy and influence decisions through courage, wisdom, and principle. Zyra continued, stepping closer. "Humans are unpredictable, yes. That unpredictability is not weakness, it is strength. It allows you to act in ways that others cannot foresee. It allows you to inspire, to solve, and to lead. This has been demonstrated here, and the Council acknowledges it." Alara bowed slightly. "Thank you, Admiral. I acted as I believed was right, not for recognition, but for what was fair and necessary." The Admiral regarded her silently for a moment, then nodded. "And that precisely is why you have succeeded. The galaxy has long underestimated humans. Today, that changes. You have earned a place among us, not just as a participant, but as a representative of your species' potential." A murmur of excitement spread through the chamber. Many delegates approached Alara to offer congratulations or acknowledgement. Some spoke in languages she did not understand, yet the meaning was clear: respect. She had altered perceptions, not through force or dominance, but through courage, intelligence, and moral clarity. Later, in private, Zyra spoke with Alara quietly. "You are remarkable," she said. Your species has survived countless challenges, often underestimated and dismissed. Humans have an adaptability, creativity, and integrity that makes them unpredictable and powerful. Do not forget it. Alara nodded. I will not, Admiral. This is only the beginning. Humanity has much to prove, but we can rise, and we can contribute to the galaxy in ways others do not expect. Zyra's golden-flecked eyes reflected a rare warmth. Indeed, and you will lead the way. As Alara left the chamber and looked out over the stars, she felt a mixture of awe and determination. The galaxy was vast, filled with civilizations older, larger, and more powerful than her own. Yet she understood now that humanity's strength lay not in size or technology, but in courage, adaptability, empathy, and moral clarity. The stars seemed to sparkle more brightly than before. Somewhere in that infinite expanse, countless beings would now recognize that humans were not to be underestimated. They could lead, influence, and survive against any odds. They could inspire trust, form alliances, and act decisively when others hesitated. Alara knew her journey was far from over, but in this moment she allowed herself a quiet satisfaction. Humanity had stood, not as weaklings, but as beings capable of shaping the galaxy through integrity, courage, and ingenuity. And she, as their representative, had shown the galaxy what it meant to be human. The hum of the flagship seemed to echo her thoughts, as if the very ship celebrated the achievement. She realized that this was more than personal victory. It was a triumph for all of humanity. Their story, often dismissed, had finally been recognized. As the chamber slowly emptied and the delegates departed, Alara looked once more at Admiral Zyra. The Admiral gave a slight nod, a rare gesture of respect. The galaxy has noticed, Zyra said. Do not waste this moment. Lead wisely, act boldly, and humanity will rise. Alara smiled faintly, a quiet promise to herself and her species. We will, she replied. And with that she stepped forward into the vastness of space, ready to embrace her role, ready to prove that humans, unpredictable and underestimated, could stand among the stars as equals, leaders, and pioneers. The galaxy had watched, and humanity had answered.